Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I'm Mark Fierro with Vegas Legal Magazine publisher Tyler Morgan, Fierro Communications Vice President Jeff Haney. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our guest today is a name that everyone who follows the news in Southern Nevada will remember. Ryan Bundy of the Bundy family of Mesquite, Nevada, first came to the attention of news viewers as a result of the standoff with police and federal authorities after federal agents attempted to remove the Bundy family's cattle. There was national news following that face-off. In Oregon, Bundy and his associates occupied the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Bundy went on to win in federal court over both issues. Today, he is running for the governor of the state of Nevada. Ryan Bundy, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
I will say this. Generally speaking, and I've been in politics for a long time, generally speaking, when you hear of a third-party candidate, none of it makes sense. But I'm going to guarantee people that they are going to agree with you on at least one of the things that you're talking about today. And I noticed what you said about the privatization of a prison system, and I think you're right on the money in that regard. So tell us, for starters, why governor?
Well, you know, the governor is the chief executive officer of the state. He has particular powers that other positions don't have. He's also can be considered the chief magistrate, too, because he can override certain things. And so the position of governor is a very powerful position. Now, there's some serious things that need to be corrected. And so when I considered the other positions to run for, they're just not sufficient to correct the problems that need to be corrected. But from the seat of government, or from the seat of the governor, I will have the ability to make the changes needed.
Let me ask you this. Why, you've got following, why would you not support Laxalt? It seems like he would be the closer of the two. Why not?
Sure. You know, when Adam Laxalt ran for Attorney General in 2014 against Cortez Masto, I did support him. I give him a telephone call. I talked to him about certain things because, you know, Cortez Masto was the Attorney General during the 2014 standoff, and yet she allowed it to happen under her authority and control and didn't stop federal operatives from encroaching upon her people of the state of Nevada. She allowed that to happen. So certainly we needed somebody else in there. When I spoke to Adam Laxalt, he sounded like he was going to be a good man for the job. And yet the problem is since then, he has not lifted one finger to help us in our case. And particularly after the government, say, rounded us up and threw us in incarceration, there were several people who went to him and said, hey, you got to help these people out. You are in a position of authority to do so. You need to protect your people. And nothing. Crickets. He didn't raise one finger. And so not just us, but there's others in the state. The Fuenteses is their name, over there in Nye County, and they have issues with, again, another wildlife refuge where they're stealing the Fuenteses' water. And again, Adam Laxalt is not there. You know, his campaign states protecting Nevada. Well, okay, when are you going to start doing that? You've been in position for 4 years, and you haven't done so. And so how can I have any confidence that he will protect Nevada as a governor? He hasn't done it as Attorney General. He's not going to do it as a governor.
Before we move on to some of the other issues, while we're on Laxalt, I'm curious, during this campaign, at any time during the campaign, did Mr. Laxalt approach you in any way for a face-to-face meeting where perhaps he would try to persuade you to maybe suspend your campaign or throw your support behind him or anything along those lines? Has anything like that occurred during this campaign?
Not from Laxalt directly. Now, I've had several people that supposedly are working within his campaign, I don't know how closely, that have asked me to do so, and I told them, hey, I'll welcome a visit from Adam Laxalt, you know, and in fact, you know, you could consider that if I alone could thwart his win, then I should be his #1 convert. In other words, he should be trying to get me on board with him more so than any other individual in the state. And so I invited him to my home and said, you know, if you want me to support you, then you've got to bring something that will gain my confidence in you. And again, nothing.
No show.
No show.
Why do you think that is?
I don't think he has anything he could bring to bring confidence that he'll protect the state of Nevada. I think he's a complete failure. I think his name says it all. He lacks.
Let me ask you this. The president, and that's why we got interested in you, the president recently started talking about opening public lands to fracking. I'm interested in your take on that. Does that help your case in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah,
or?
I don't know about that or not. You know, the problem is simply that this public land constitutionally does not belong to the federal government. And so what right does the president have to say whether or not it's opened? Okay, according to the Constitution, to make the needful rules and regulations for a territory. That's under Article 4. Some problems here?
No.
Don't want me to play with that?
Gotcha.
Okay, so...
See, they're imposing rules on you already.
No, I fiddle with my fingers. Okay, so according to the Constitution, Congress has power to make the needful rules and regulations respecting a territory. They also have the authority to dispose of territory. However, once a territory matures enough to become a state, and statehood is initiated, everything changes. Congress loses its power over a state. A state now is independent, it is sovereign, it is separate. It is not a subdivision of the federal government. Now, it does belong to the union, or becomes a member of the union, more properly said. And the union, of course, they join the union for common causes and purposes, for benefits by being a member of the union. But then once it's a union or a state, if Congress wants to own land within that state, it must do so under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which means that it has to purchase the land. It has to get the state legislature's consent, then it has to make a lawful purchase, and then that land can only be used for the 5 reasons that it's stated there, for military bases, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So in short, all of this land that the federal government claims to own, they don't.
I'm interested in your take on this. Interstate highways,
Okay.
the national defense,
Okay.
agencies, federal agencies like DEA and some of the others that can only, they're the only ones that can follow these across state lines. We saw for years and years and years, we lacked that at the beginning of in the 1920s, 1930s. It was criminals always had the upper hand if they went from one state to the next. Where do you come down on that?
Okay, so again, if we understand the proper form and function of the federal government as outlined in the Constitution, they do have authority over some of those things, and particularly for what you're calling out for. Okay, so in the Constitution, we do give the federal government authority to make postal roads. Okay, now that's turned into a national highway system, etc., and so they have some authority there. They can make post offices. Okay, the legitimate, if we understand what the federal government was put together for, going back to our founding fathers, we were at first originally 13 separate sovereign independent states. Now that was, of course, by the Declaration of Independence, and then had to be reinforced that through the Revolutionary War, which we won. And now those independent states always designed or intended to unite, and they did, first of all under the Articles of Confederation, and then they perfected that union under the Constitution for the United States of America. But the central government, the federal government, it's only a union, okay? It didn't create a new country, so to speak. The countries are the individual states. Now, this central government was only to uniform, to give strength in a union. And they're supposed to primarily deal with outside influences such as war and peace and foreign commerce and foreign trade, foreign relations, and to resolve disputes between the several states, which is where we come in. If someone's fleeing from one state, then they can gain some jurisdiction to bring that individual to justice, so to speak, that's getting away. But we still are separate sovereign individual states that are only united for common causes and purposes. And if we consider that closely, our founding fathers realized that to fulfill the functions that they have been given, the federal government will need to own some land to carry out those functions. Now, the land ownership that we allow them to have under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 follows closely with the purposes of function that they were given. And so they realized, okay, they're going to need some land for their seat of government. So they give them Washington, D.C., which is a 10 by 10, 10 mile square. Actually 100 square miles, 10 miles by 10 miles. And then they say they can have like authority over all places purchased for the purpose of the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings.
I get you. I want to use this time. I want to hear more about your general topics. I want to get there. And I don't want to badge you on this, but I do want to ask you this question. Today is 2018. To me, we have two real enemies in this world, and one of them is Russia. The other is as much a competitor as anything else, and that is China. They would love to hear that, wouldn't they? If we were broken up into 50 separate entities, that would be that would be Putin's best day. That would certainly be China's best day, wouldn't it?
No, not so, because we are united for the common causes and purposes of national defense and foreign relations. And so when we're talking about dealing with Russia or China or any other state in the world, that's exactly why our union was formed. And so that's their purpose in place. And so it doesn't weaken us at all.
Like I said, I don't want to belabor the point. We'll move on. I'm sure Tyler's
That's
got
a good point to bring up, so thank you.
So you've certainly done your homework on government, and it seems like you're pretty well versed in it, and that's great for running for governor. But for the people that are listening and watching that don't really know you for who you are, what is your background? I mean, I know you talk about the land that you own. I know you're a rancher. Talk about you and your family and what your background is.
Okay, so I'm, a lot of people know us as ranchers. I'm more versed than that, but I'll give you a brief history. I was born on Nevada Day, October 31st, which yesterday, by the way. Nevada's 108th birthday. I was actually born in Utah because that was the closest hospital to where we lived there in Mesquite, up in St. George. But I was basically born and raised here. I was raised on the ranch, and we run, beef cattle, and of course those cattle are able to eat and live off the desert foliage that you can't really get any good out of any other way. But those cattle are able to turn that into a usable commodity, which ends up with red meat on your plate, or in your restaurant, or wherever else you might utilize it. So that's unique. But furthermore, I've also been involved with construction. I owned a construction company for about 20 years, and I've built a lot of things. I've built quite a few schools and, all kinds of buildings, both residential and commercial buildings. I'm a certified welder. I've done some high-rise, buildings, steel like you see go up around Vegas. I've worked on those type of construction projects. I run and operate heavy equipment, part of the construction. I do concrete. I can relate to the working man. I know what that's about. I am a businessman because I own the company. I understand how to contract and to, resolve disputes and issues with people. As I've been that route as a businessman, I understand how to deal with money and deal with human resources and manage.
How about your
people.
experience? Have you had previous experience, either you or your family, in the political arena? Has anybody run for office before in the past?
I have actually run for office, which I did not win those races. By the way, my construction company was in Utah, Cedar City, Utah. I run for office as county commissioner in Iron County, Utah. I also run for Utah State Legislature. I did not win those offices. I've never served in that position.
Obviously, land ownership and the rules governing land usage are such key issues for you. So let me ask you, currently, how would you characterize your relationship right now with the ranching community in Nevada specifically, but also throughout the entire West? It seems as if you were considered a hero to them, conquering hero, if you will, and then you got into trouble, and it seems as if a lot of them maybe distanced themselves from you. I'm wondering if you would say that's accurate, and have they come back to support you during your run for governor?
There's a little bit of both, and in fact, over the ages, and when I say the ages, the last 30 years or so, a lot of the ranchers, they haven't supported us completely because they can't seem to grasp and understand what we're really trying to do. And also in conflict, we had Wayne Hage. I'm sure you're familiar with Wayne Hage. So, Wayne Hage was also a hero in this battle, yet he took it from a different approach. He took it from the approach that the federal government does own the land, but that he has rights upon it. And our approach is that, no, the federal government does not own the land, but yes, we still have rights upon it that are protected by state law. Now, because Wayne Hage was so popular in his aspects, a lot of the ranchers wanted to follow his way. And in the end, after, say, a 30-year legal battle, he's lost. And now, his cattle have been taken. His son is taken up and has tried to keep the battle going on after Wayne Hage Sr.'s death. But anyway, a lot of the ranchers put a lot of hope into his stance, and it's failed in the end. And so they're looking at us, and quite frankly, over the years, they're like, oh, Bundys will fail, Bundys will fail, Bundys will fail. But the problem is we're the ones that are able to stand. So far, what we've been doing has been successful. Clark County, for example, used to have 53 different ranchers. We're the only ones left. Okay? Why are we the only ones left? Because of the stand we have made. Southern California and northern Arizona, they have removed ranchers all across there. Nevada is only at about 50% the cattle that it used to be. Wyoming, Arizona, Utah, all of these western states, their cattle numbers and sheep numbers are way down from historical numbers.
I will say this. You talk about losing and other families losing in court. You not only won, I've watched the courts for a long, long time as a reporter and as part of my business now. And I have never heard of anyone who defended themselves, who earned any respect from anyone. Everybody considered anyone who represented themselves in court as a complete moron. And you actually got very high marks and ended up making the motion that ended up leading to the dismissal of the charges, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
So tell us, you're at this point, you're facing off with the biggest law firm in the world, the U.S. Attorney's Office. And there's some bad optics here. You've got some people on your side that have guns. You've got face off with the law enforcement authorities. So it doesn't look good. But what you said was that the United States government had not produced information that you were entitled to in order to proceed to court. Is that correct?
That is correct. According to the codes, they have to provide everything. Okay, they cannot lawfully withhold information to gain advantage over their defendants, and yet they do it all the time, but they don't all the time get caught. Now, this is one advantage I had as representing myself, is because I personally knew some things that were out there that attorneys didn't know and could never been conveyed to them. And so because I had this personal knowledge, I kept pressing the issue, and I made motions of discovery to bring it forth. They made fun of me in their retorts, in their responses, saying that I was a fool, etc. But I persisted with that. And then when we started to question witnesses on the stand, I would ask them about these particular information, and several of them denied. But I guess one of their witnesses didn't get the memo and let the cat out of the bag. She answered my question honestly, which is a miracle from a federal employee, that, yeah, there was some cameras there and there should be some information there, and it wasn't. And so that opened the can.
So the bottom line, that was the dismissal, but that was dismissal with prejudice, wasn't it, as I recall?
That was dismissal with prejudice, but it was more than that. See, Again, a Brady violation, even one Brady violation, which is withholding a exculpatory material, exculpatory evidence, is enough to defeat a case. And yet we identified like 11 different Brady violations, and when it come right down to it, I believe the judge stuck the government with 7 of them. And so that was enough to dismiss the case with prejudice.
So we mentioned the Oregon standoff up top, and that's what we've been talking about here. So it was a victory in court and a victory overall, but it did not come without casualties. And I want to ask you, how close do you feel you came to losing your life, to being killed? And while that was happening, how frequently were you worried that you would be killed maybe that very day?
Well, you know, they did kill Lavoy Finicum, and he is an innocent man just as we are innocent. And Lavoy Finicum was the best man that America could produce, and yet they killed him in cold blood. Now, I was in that same vehicle, so was Shauna Cox, who was here in studio with us, and I do believe it was their intent to kill us all. They shot many rounds into the vehicle without even being able to see their targets. Yes, they did hit me. I do have a bullet in my shoulder from that day. And so I'm very blessed. I believe I was protected. We were protected by the Lord that day not to be killed.
God, it's always impressive to just see somebody who can just defend themselves and stand up to the big man like they did. And that's not easy. I mean, going up against the federal attorney's office, I mean, that's not easy work, and you definitely did your homework. So I applaud you on that one.
I will say this, in the Vinicum case, because I was very, very interested in that outcome, and that once he had stated they can kill me, once he can stated that they weren't going to take his guns, it tends to shift things in the public mind. And I think those are some of the reasons that public sentiment that might have otherwise naturally attached to you and the people around you might have gone the other way, that people might have been far more supportive. The picture on the front cover of the Review Journal of someone who supported you, and I'm not sure how closely you knew them or if you ever knew them, pointing a rifle, to me, that's when I'm out. If there's a law enforcement officer on the other side, that's where I draw the line. I'm out. But it is, as Tyler said, it's one thing to say these things, but it's another thing to live them day in and day out. How long were you guys holed up in that place? Tell us what that was like in there.
And which place, please?
When you were up in Oregon.
In Oregon, we were in the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, which, by the way, by our claim of adverse possession, we had taken possession of it, renamed it to the Harney County Resource Center, and we were there, I don't know what, 25, 26 days.
So are you talking about the possibility of getting killed in the interim?
Yeah, sure. That was a real threat.
People were allowed to bring you food, is that correct?
Oh, we were going in and going out. My brother went into town, got a haircut. We'd go visit restaurants, grocery store. We weren't holed up.
That's an unusual situation there. I'm not sure I've heard of one of those before.
Okay, and then in fact other people were coming in. In fact, you know, they shut down the schools for whatever reason I can't understand, because we were 30 miles out of town, nor did we ever make any threat against schools. So that was all just a scare tactic on their part, which was totally ridiculous. So now that the kids are not in school, where do you think they come? They come out to check us out. We had several high school kids, elementary school kids. Families would bring their kids out. So we had some of them doing school reports. They'd come in and interview us like newscast people, and so the school kids, a bunch of them were out with us.
I want to ask you something, because I've always wanted. I'm on both sides of this issue, and I know how strong you are regarding gun ownership and the way that you feel about it. I grew up in Nevada. I wasn't here as long as your family was, but I got here when I was a kid. Las Vegas was so small that we would take our 12-gauge shotguns over our head and run as fast as we could and jump over the Las Vegas Wash. The whole damn Las Vegas Wash was narrow enough you could do that back then. And we'd go out and we'd go shooting, we'd go bird hunting and rabbits and everything else. I love guns. I love the way they're made. I like to look at them. I like to clean them. I like everything about them. I know how to use a gun. I never put my finger on a trigger. I never let the end of a gun point at anybody unless I'm meaning to use it. Now, that hasn't come up a lot in my life. Do you believe that people, because I'm opposed, this is where I draw the line. I'm telling you, now, because I'm interested in hearing your side of it. I'm opposed to the AR-15 and what are termed assault rifles. Anything that I need to do, I figure I get done with a 12 gauge or a rifle or whatever else I need. But I don't in any way give up on any bit of gun ownership beyond that. You want to take my guns? I'm with the rest of them. You got to get it out of my dead hand first. Why is there no bend? Why is there no, when we've seen over and over and over again, no school shootings, AR-15 isn't available, AR-15 becomes available, and time after time again, school shootings, theater shootings, and everything else. Do you think that there's any room to budge on this, or is that just it?
Well, with all due respect, sir, you misunderstand the Second Amendment.
Well, irrespective of that, what I'm interested in, I'm just interested in hearing you on this one point, and then we'll talk about the broader, because I told you my background.
Sure.
Where do you come down on assault rifle?
It absolutely needs to be in the hands of the people.
Okay,
And-
let me ask you this.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. And you're good enough at lawyering that you may not to want to answer this, but let's just say that tomorrow there is a pistol. Okay, it's easily concealed, and you can't. You can go through any metal detector and it won't go off. Okay, it has virtually unlimited rounds. Okay, 200 or 300 rounds you can carry in your pocket. Is that something that should be given to the American people because of the Second Amendment?
I don't want to answer that question directly, but I want to talk about. Well,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm not.
I
gonna
could
interrupt
answer,
anymore.
and I already formed an opinion on that. By the
Okay.
way, I could answer it, but the reason I want to talk about the Second Amendment and its purpose will reveal my answer to you. Okay, we got to look at the Second Amendment. What does it say? It says a militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Mhm.
The Second Amendment was not put in place for our recreation or hunting. Okay, so shotgun doesn't cover it. Okay, a militia, by very definition, is we the people. It is, in fact, in Nevada revised statutes define a militia as being every able-bodied man, that includes you three, between the ages of 17 and 65, and that there's two parts of the militia. There's the organized militia, which includes the National Guard and Naval Reserves. And I don't know if Nevada needs a Naval Reserve. We don't have much waterfront. But it definitely includes the National Guard. And then there's the unorganized militia. And the unorganized militia includes everybody who is not an active member of the National Guard or Naval Reserves. So by very definition, every able-bodied man in the state of Nevada between the ages of 17 and 65 is a militiaman. Okay? And a militia is necessary for the security of a free state. The second part of that says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the militia needs to be well armed, well trained to secure our freedom. And that's the freedom of this nation, the nation of Nevada. Okay? The Constitution mentions the militia in 4 places. The first is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, where it states that Congress shall have the power to call forth the militia. And the second is in the very next clause, Clause 16, that when they are called forth, that they are supposed to arm them, train them, and that part of them, by the way. So we learned several things here. Number one, we learned that the militia exists prior to and independent of Congress, that Congress can only call them forth. So if they're going to call them forth, they must exist prior, and they are only calling that part of them forth. Now the next place is in Article 2, Clause 2, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, where it states that the President shall be the Commander-in-Chief of that part of the militia that is called forth. Okay, so the President's not the Commander-in-Chief of the entire militia. He's only in part of that part of them which is called forth. And then, of course, the fourth place is the Second Amendment, where it says that the militia is necessary, not optional. It's necessary. We have to have a militia. And who is the militia by definition? It's we the people. It is the men.
I get you. I just want to ask you this one question, and it's not a hypothetical. I believe that this is an absolute certainty. In 10 years, we will have lost thousands of children, some of whom haven't been born yet. They will be shot to death in schools. That we're going to lose other people who congregate to just have an evening night, an evening out in the town, listen to country and western music out on the strip. There will be thousands and thousands of them in the next 10 years. With all the language that you talked about, the intent of all those laws is to protect the people of the United States. The rest of the world looks at us as if we're insane. Everybody looked up to us. And with the advent of these assault weapons that are far more deadly on a semi-automatic than they are on an automatic, you know that automatic weapons are a defensive weapon to keep your enemy down so the sharpshooter can pick people off. How do we say that the Second Amendment is protecting people when we know that based on current statistics, right where we're at right now, that thousands of innocents will die at the hands of their fellow Americans because of the simple mechanization of these weapons?
Well, do you know that T-shirts don't kill people? People wearing T-shirts kill people. Okay? So do you get my point there? It's not the guns that are killing the people. It's the people who are misusing the firearms that are killing people.
Well,
now,
you know what? I'm going to say this. You
But
and
there's
I are going to
also,
keep
when
talking,
you
but I'm not going to take up your time to do it because I find you very interesting, and I would like to engage you further on this point.
But yeah, the fact that people with guns kill people, it's beyond the point, but it goes to the fact that there's so many people who are abusing the right to have a gun that's creating the problem. And I'll agree with that. But from what you're saying is you're presenting yourself as pretty much a strict constitutionalist.
Absolutely.
It's in the Constitution, it's a law. Well, something interesting came up regarding immigration that a lot of Republicans and constitutionalists are now sort of exhibiting a little bit of hypocrisy over, and that's the birthright of citizenship. The Constitution says it's a birthright, but now all of a sudden there's a lot of these Second Amendment and a lot of constitutionalists coming forward saying that that's not right. We shouldn't have these so-called labeled anchor babies and so forth. So how do you stand on immigration?
Well, you know, we're moving the issue right there without resolving the first one, but you know, we're also talking about an amendment. The 14th Amendment is what you're referring to.
This is the Second Amendment.
Well, the 14th Amendment is the birthright citizenship issue, and so and some will claim that anyway that's the birthright of the father wherever the father's born. Anyway, I don't know that one well enough to really comment on it tonight. But going back to the Second Amendment and the issue at hand that you're talking about, there's several things I want to bring up. First of all, except for this shooting that happened in Las Vegas a year ago or so, the other shootings did not take place with AR-15 or automatic rifles. All of them have just been handgun and so forth. But
I think the most recent one was a handgun, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But my point is still, it's not the gun's fault. It is a moral decline in people. Okay?
I'll agree with you there when you're talking about the individual and San Bernardino and where else? Florida and the school. The advent of the AR-15 has made for an entirely different level of killing, is what I'm saying. You answered the question honestly, and that is that you believe that people have the right to own those weapons. I want to ask you, I want to return solidly now because we only have so many more minutes. I want to talk about you and the governor's race.
Okay.
So what do you hear when you go around the state? What are people telling you? What are they answering you when you go to the door, when you meet them at rallies, when you get up there?
Well, I've shaken the hands of thousands of people. And I'll tell you what, the response is awesome. Okay, there was one who was helping me. Don Cox is his name. He's the husband of Donna Cox, who is the county commissioner over in Nye County, and so they've been involved with politics for several years and several campaigns. And he's been campaigning on my behalf, and we were over there shaking hands at a fall festival that's held in Pahrump. Thousands of people were there. He come to me kind of afterwards, and he's like, "I have shaken 1,000 hands. I have given out your pamphlets." And he goes, "I have never seen such positive response in a campaign ever before." He goes, "Of 1,000, I've only got 2 that were negative. Everybody else is in favor of you."
I tell you, I drive across state all the time. I have a client. I could fly to Reno whenever I want to. I choose to drive. I love seeing the back, those tiny towns, and those aren't the smallest towns in Nevada by a long stretch. I've been all over this place. One of the first things I did, I went to every single ghost town and all the towns in between them when I was a kid. And I can see you being the odds-on favorite in so many of those towns because you're a Nevadan.
I am a Nevadan.
You're a Nevadan. What is it that you bring to the table that nobody else brings to the table in this governor's race?
Well, I believe I have a sound understanding of the proper form of government, a constitutional form of government that these others lack. I understand the proper purpose and function of government. I don't believe that the other candidates do. You know, that function is that, in fact, our founding fathers said it, that the only legitimate purpose for government is to aid the individual in claiming, using, and defending his rights. Any other function is tyranny and usurpation of power. And yet, our government, both state and federal, start to apply other functions. And that's improper, and that destroys liberty. I don't believe my opponents understand that. I understand what our founding fathers set up, that this is a union of several states. This is not one country. This is a union of several states, currently 50. Originally it was only 13. But the definition of understanding what a state is something that I have that they don't understand. I understand what a union is. I understand what a monarchy is. And our founding fathers did not set up an empire. They set up a union. There's a difference. And yet, currently, people believe that this is the empire. They don't want to use that terminology. And that the states are just a subdivision of that empire. But that's not what it is. A state is a state. A state is a sovereign entity. And that we have joined together in a union for common causes and purposes. And that's what our founding fathers set up. My opponents don't understand that.
Have you established any stances on some of the key topics amongst candidates, such as education or energy or anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah,
Sure.
I wanted to specifically ask about education as well, just to support Tyler's question. Such a big topic throughout Nevada, in any governor's administration, and especially in Clark County with the large school district here. It seems to be a huge issue that comes up again and again. So please.
Yes, and that is close to my heart. I don't call it my first importance, but it is up there. I do understand that Nevada ranks last, and I know that ranking goes up and down just a little bit, but 50th out of 50. So in other words, our education is very poor in Nevada in comparison. And so just about anything we do should improve it. I am one who believes that the primary responsibility to educate our children resides with the parent, not the state. And that the state can only aid the individual, aid the parents in their education. It's not necessarily a state responsibility. Now, that being said, I can see the problem with the gigantic school districts here in Clark County. Right now, Nevada has it where each county is its own school district, but Clark County is so big that the school district has just become a bureaucracy unto itself, and that's inhibiting, I believe, the education of our children. I would like to see education, the school system, taken out of the public sector, placed back in the hands of the parents, and any monies that the state intends to spend on students, which we do, as how the public schools now are currently being funded, should be placed in the hands of the parents so that they can choose, parental choice, which school, which type of school, what type, and with this money in their hands, I believe that new and private schools or different types of schools will come into existence, and that education will greatly be improved and increased by that.
A couple of things, then we've got to wrap up. You got a big endorsement from Ron Paul,
Yes.
and he created quite the tidal wave in his day. How's that impacted the race so far?
It's been positive. A lot of people respect Dr. Ron Paul. I respect him. He is a hero to me. I think he would have been a wonderful president, and we would not be in the situation we were in now had he become president.
What have you learned from this campaign?
Oh, I've learned lots of things. But I don't know what to pinpoint it on, but
I'll put it in this context. Give us your pitch. Tell people why you want to be governor right now.
gotcha. I want to be governor because I believe that I can benefit their lives by creating and reestablishing a constitutional form of government here in Nevada, recognizing that Nevada is a sovereign state and that the land and the resources belong to her and her people, that people will be at greater liberty to be able to build businesses, to grow, to increase, to be with greater freedom comes greater prosperity. And that's what I'm offering. That's my offer to Nevada.
Well, we certainly appreciate you coming with us today. We appreciate your time, and it was really great to meet you.
It's great
really,
to hear
really,
from somebody
really
outside of just the Las Vegas hub running for politics, you know?
straight shooter,
here,
and I
here.
mean that in the best sense of the term. And with that, we call it a day. The Vegas Legal Podcast. I want to thank Ryan Bundy, candidate for governor of the state of Nevada. Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine. Thanks for doing the good work and bringing some new life to the legal community in Southern Nevada. Jeff Haney, Vice President of Fiero Communications, the friendliest marketing firm in Las Vegas, by the way. And for all of you out there with a story idea, or an axe to grind, get a hold of Vegas Legal, leading magazine in Southern Nevada legal market. Call Tyler at
702-222-3476.
reach out. Tell your friends. Have a good one.